Mister, I've been in a real bad mood for a couple of years, so why don't you leave me alone? Drop your gun belt and go away.
There's a moment in Hollywood that no one likes to talk about. It's not when a movie underperforms, it's when two big movies fail back to back. And suddenly, the industry starts whispering. 1 minute, an actor is untouchable. The next, phones stop ringing, studios get nervous, and careers that looked bulletproof begin to crack in real time. What makes it worse? Some of these films were supposed to be guaranteed wins, big budgets, big hype, big expectations, and yet they collapsed. Today, we're looking at those brutal 1-2 punches, moments when Hollywood's biggest names learned the hard way that momentum can disappear overnight. Let's start breaking it down. 10. Bruce Willis, Hudson Hawk, and Billy Bathgate. At the start of the 1990s, Bruce Willis looked unstoppable. He wasn't just an action star, he was the action star. After the massive success of Die Hard and Die Hard 2, studios treated his name like a guarantee. Tickets would sell, audiences would show up. Failure didn't seem like an option. That confidence is exactly what made the fall so brutal. Willis decided to swing for the fences with Hudson Hawk, a bizarre passion project that mixed action, slapstick comedy, and musical numbers. On paper, it sounded risky. On screen, it was chaos. Audiences didn't know what they were watching. Critics tore it apart, and the tone felt wildly out of sync with what fans wanted from him. The movie didn't just disappoint, it confused people. By the time it left theaters, it had reportedly lost the studio around $50 million, and Willis suddenly went from can't miss to what just happened. The damage might have been survivable if it ended there. It didn't. Just 6 months later, Willis pivoted hard in the opposite direction with Billy Bathgate, a serious gangster drama meant to prove his range and earn prestige credibility. On paper, it looked safe. Period drama, respected director, Dustin Hoffman in the cast. But the problem was simple. Willis was badly miscast. Audiences didn't buy him in the role. Critics weren't impressed, and the film quietly sank at the box office, barely earning back a fraction of its budget. 2 movies, 2 completely different tones, 2 total failures. What made this back-to-back sting so hard wasn't just the money, it was the message. Hollywood realized that Bruce Willis wasn't invincible. Star power alone wasn't enough to carry strange creative choices or prestige gambles that didn't fit. While Willis would absolutely bounce back later with hits like Pulp Fiction and The Fifth Element, 1991 was a cold splash of reality. It proved that even the biggest stars can misread the room and pay for it immediately. 9. Kevin Costner, Wyatt Earp, and The War. In the early 90s, Kevin Costner wasn't just popular, he was Hollywood royalty. After Dances with Wolves won Best Picture, Costner had the kind of influence actors dream about. Then, 1994 happened. Costner's downfall began with Wyatt Earp, a sprawling 3-hour western that arrived at the worst possible time. Just months earlier, Tombstone had already given audiences a faster, sharper, more exciting version of the same legend, and done it better. By the time Wyatt Earp hit theaters, viewers were already exhausted. The movie felt bloated, self-important, and painfully slow. Despite its massive budget and prestige ambitions, it struggled to earn even $25 million domestically. For a star of Costner's level, that was a shock. And before Hollywood could even process that disappointment, things got worse. Less than 6 months later, Costner appeared in The War, an emotional drama that leaned heavily into sentimentality. While Costner wasn't even the sole lead, the marketing treated him like the main draw, and audiences weren't buying it anymore. Critics dismissed the film as manipulative, and moviegoers stayed away in droves. The box office numbers confirmed what insiders were already thinking. Costner's aura was fading. This 1-2 punch didn't just hurt, it rewrote his career narrative. Almost overnight, Costner went from Oscar-winning visionary to box office problem. Even worse, this slump set the stage for an even bigger disaster the following year with Waterworld, which cemented the idea that Costner had lost his touch. While he would continue working for decades, 1994 marked the end of his reign as Hollywood's golden boy, a reminder that success in this industry has an expiration date, whether you see it coming or not. 8. Ryan Reynolds, Green Lantern and the Change-Up. Before the sarcasm, before the red suit, before becoming one of the most self-aware stars in Hollywood, Ryan Reynolds was fighting for survival. By 2011, he had spent years hovering on the edge of stardom. Recognizable, likable, but not quite essential. Green Lantern was supposed to change that. This was the role meant to crown him as a true blockbuster leading man. Instead, it nearly ended his career. On paper, Green Lantern looked unbeatable. A major DC superhero, a massive budget, cutting-edge CGI, and Reynolds front and center. In reality, the film collapsed under the weight of a weak script, tonal confusion, and a digital suit that became an instant internet joke. Just 2 months later, Reynolds tried to pivot hard with The Change-Up, an R-rated body swap comedy meant to show range and remind audiences he could still do broad humor. But the damage was already done. The film landed with a thud. Reviews were poor, box office returns were underwhelming, and it failed to change the narrative forming around him. Instead of being seen as versatile, Reynolds was now labeled unreliable, a star who couldn't open a blockbuster or carry a comedy. That back-to-back collapse created a dangerous industry perception. Studios stopped seeing him as a safe bet. Big roles dried up. For nearly 5 years, Reynolds drifted, appearing in smaller projects, taking risks, and quietly reassessing his image. What makes this story fascinating isn't just the fall, but the lesson he learned from it. Reynolds didn't fight the criticism, he absorbed it. He leaned into self-awareness, turned failure into part of his brand, and eventually used that exact reputation to fuel Deadpool. But in 2011, none of that was guaranteed. At that moment, Green Lantern and The Change-Up didn't just fail. They convinced Hollywood that Ryan Reynolds might never fully arrive. Number 7. Sylvester Stallone. Get Carter and Driven. Sylvester Stallone is the poster child for comebacks, but even legends hit a point where momentum completely disappears. By the late 1990s, Stallone's dominance as an 80s action icon had already faded. Audiences had changed, tastes had shifted, and the larger-than-life heroes of the previous decade suddenly felt outdated. Stallone needed a reinvention, something gritty, grounded, and modern. Get Carter was supposed to be that reset. It backfired spectacularly. The film was a remake of a respected British crime classic, but Stallone's version stripped away the original's restraint and replaced it with empty brutality. Critics hated it, fans rejected it, and it quickly earned a humiliating Rotten Tomatoes score before disappearing from theaters. Instead of reinventing Stallone as a serious dramatic actor, Get Carter reinforced the idea that he was stuck in the past. Still, the damage might have been manageable. Then came Driven. Hoping for a rebound, Stallone wrote and starred in this high-octane racing film, clearly aiming for Top Gun on wheels. The problem? Everything about it felt artificial. The dialogue was mocked, the story was nonsensical, and the CGI car crashes were so exaggerated they became unintentional comedy. Despite a budget hovering near $100 million, the movie barely made back half its cost. 2 releases, 2 expensive failures, 0 goodwill. This back-to-back disaster sent a clear signal. Audiences had moved on. Stallone was no longer a draw, and studios treated him accordingly. For years, he struggled to find relevance, drifting through smaller roles and low-impact projects. It wasn't until 2006, with the nostalgia-fueled revival of Rocky Balboa, that he finally clawed his way back into public favor. But Get Carter and Driven marked his lowest point. They weren't just bad movies, they were proof that even cultural icons can become disconnected from their audience. And when that happens, Hollywood doesn't wait around for you to catch up. 6. Johnny Depp, The Lone Ranger and Transcendence. For nearly a decade, Johnny Depp felt untouchable. Anything he did made money, especially when it involved strange accents, heavy makeup, and eccentric characters. Studios didn't just cast him, they built entire franchises around him. For a while, Depp didn't seem affected by trends, economics, or bad bets. Then, that illusion collapsed. The downfall began with The Lone Ranger. From the start, the project was plagued by problems, exploding budgets, constant delays, and growing controversy. Depp's casting as Tonto became the focal point of criticism, and by the time the film reached theaters, audiences weren't curious anymore. They were actively uninterested. Despite massive marketing and Disney's backing, the movie flopped hard. For the first time, Depp wasn't viewed as quirky, he was viewed as risky. Trying to reset his image, Depp pivoted to serious science fiction with Transcendence. The goal was clear: prove he could still lead prestige projects without relying on gimmicks. But the film landed flat. Critics found it lifeless, audiences stayed away, and the box office failed to even cover its budget. That second failure locked in a new perception. Depp was no longer seen as a creative goldmine, but as a financial question mark. Studios hesitated. Big offers slowed. His once beloved eccentricity started to feel excessive instead of inspired. While personal controversies later deepened the decline, The Lone Ranger and Transcendence were the true turning point. The moment Johnny Depp stopped being an asset and started being a risk. 5. John Travolta, Battlefield Earth, and Lucky Numbers. In the late 90s, John Travolta pulled off what most actors never do: a full-blown comeback. After years off the radar, Pulp Fiction made him cool again. Not ironic cool, effortlessly cool. He followed it with solid hits, industry respect, and real momentum. Then the year 2000 showed up and erased almost all of it. Battlefield Earth wasn't just a flop, it was a spectacle of failure. A deeply personal passion project, the film was ridiculed from the moment its trailers dropped. The dialogue was absurd, the performances were baffling, and the visual choices were so strange they became memes before memes were a thing. Critics tore it apart, audiences mocked it, and it went on to dominate the Razzie Awards. More importantly, it destroyed Travolta's credibility overnight. And then things somehow got worse. Just 5 months later came Lucky Numbers. No controversy, no outrage, just silence. Despite a respected director and a decent premise, the film barely made a dent, earning around $10 million against a $63 million budget. Hollywood noticed, and not in a good way. Those two films did something brutal. They made Travolta uncool again. The edge vanished. The confidence disappeared. In a single year, he burned through a decade of rebuilt goodwill. He kept working, sure, but the version of Travolta that felt untouchable never really came back. 4. Ben Affleck, Gigli and Surviving Christmas. In the early 2000s, Ben Affleck wasn't just a movie star. He was a tabloid obsession. His relationship with Jennifer Lopez dominated headlines, and Hollywood leaned hard into the hype. Unfortunately, that overexposure collided with two disastrous films that nearly derailed his career. It started with Gigli. Marketed as a star-powered romantic comedy, the film became infamous almost overnight. The dialogue was painfully awkward, the tone was all over the place, and the chemistry felt forced rather than charming. Critics eviscerated it, audiences avoided it, and the box office numbers were brutal. Roughly $7 million against a reported $75 million budget. Gigli didn't just flop, it became shorthand for bad cinema. Affleck tried to disappear for a bit, but bad timing struck again. The following year, he starred in Surviving Christmas, a holiday comedy that somehow missed every emotional beat it aimed for. The studio clearly lacked confidence, dumping the film into theaters months before Christmas, a move critics openly mocked. Audiences responded with indifference, and the movie vanished almost instantly. Together, these two failures poisoned Affleck's public image. He wasn't seen as unlucky, he was seen as overhyped, overpaid, and out of touch. Hollywood stopped trusting him as a leading man, and Affleck hookup culture with celebrity gossip became inseparable from his work. What saved him was retreat. Affleck stepped back, focused on writing and directing, and slowly rebuilt credibility behind the camera. But Gigli and Surviving Christmas marked the moment his acting career hit rock bottom. A reminder that fame without goodwill is fragile, and Hollywood turns fast when the audience stops laughing with you. Number 3. Eddie Murphy, The Adventures of Pluto. Nash and I Spy. There was a time when Eddie Murphy was the safest bet in Hollywood. If his name was on the poster, the movie made money. By 2002, that assumption collapsed violently. The implosion began with The Adventures of Pluto Nash, a sci-fi comedy plagued by production issues. The film sat unreleased for years before finally limping into theaters. The result was shocking, a $100 million budget that earned back only about $7 million. That's not a flop. That's one of the worst financial performances in movie history. Critics were merciless, and audiences treated it like it didn't exist. Murphy needed a rebound fast. Just 3 months later, he teamed up with Owen Wilson for I Spy, hoping buddy comedy chemistry would stop the bleeding. It didn't. The film lacked edge, energy, and the fearless humor that once defined Murphy's appeal. Reviews were poor, box office returns were weak, and the pattern became impossible to ignore. These back-to-back failures shattered Murphy's invincible image. Studios realized his name alone could no longer guarantee success. Riskier projects vanished, and Murphy pivoted towards safer, family-friendly roles where expectations were lower and brand damage was minimal. While he remained famous, the version of Eddie Murphy, who dominated pop culture in the 80s and 90s, was gone. Pluto Nash and I Spy weren't just bad movies. They marked the end of an era, proving that even the biggest comedy king can lose the audience when timing, taste, and trust disappear at once. Number 2. Geena Davis, Cutthroat Island and The Long Kiss. Good night. This isn't just a career collapse. It's a Hollywood cautionary tale.
Geena Davis was an Oscar winner with credibility, range, and star power. But one disastrous decision triggered a chain reaction that went far beyond her own career. It started with Cutthroat Island, a pirate epic plagued by problems from day one. Script rewrites, casting changes, ballooning costs. By the time cameras stopped rolling, the budget had spiraled completely out of control. When the film finally hit theaters, audiences stayed away. The result was historic. Not just a flop, but one of the biggest box office losses ever recorded. The financial damage was so severe it bankrupted the studio behind it, effectively killing the modern pirate genre for years. Overnight, Davis became associated with financial disaster, whether that label was fair or not.
Desperate to course correct, Davis returned the very next year with The Long Kiss Goodnight, a sharp, stylish action thriller that actually deserved better. The film was well written, tightly directed, and showcased her reign, but perception had already poisoned the well. Studios were nervous, audiences were hesitant. Despite solid craftsmanship, the movie underperformed and failed to erase the stigma. That second disappointment sealed her fate. In Hollywood, context matters more than quality. These films didn't just stall her momentum. They quietly ended her run as a major Hollywood lead, pushing her toward television and smaller projects. A brutal reminder that sometimes timing matters more than ability. Number 1. Taylor Kitsch, John Carter and Battleship. No actor has ever been handed a worse 2-month window in Hollywood history. Taylor Kitsch didn't slowly fall from stardom. He was crushed by it before it even began. Studios were convinced he was the next big thing and pushed all their chips in at once. The result was catastrophic. First came John Carter, a massive sci-fi gamble with a staggering budget. It was marketed poorly and released with impossible expectations. Audiences were confused, critics were lukewarm, and the box office collapse was brutal. The film reportedly lost Disney around $200 million. For most actors, that alone would be career-ending, but Hollywood wasn't done. Just weeks later, Battleship hit theaters, a loud, effects-heavy blockbuster based on a board game. Critics dismissed it as empty spectacle, audiences stayed away, and the movie sank hard, losing another $150 million. In less than 60 days, Kitsch became the face of nearly $500 million in failed studio investments, and that's what sealed his fate. The problem wasn't talent, it was optics. Executives don't see nuance, they see numbers, and those numbers screamed danger. Overnight, Kitsch went from future franchise star to too risky to leave. Unlike others on this list, he never got a redemption arc. These back-to-back disasters didn't derail his career. They prevented it from ever truly starting. It's a harsh reminder that in Hollywood, being pushed too fast can be just as deadly as being forgotten. If even one of these stories caught you off guard, make sure you hit like. It really helps this video reach more people. If you enjoy honest, no-fluff deep dives into Hollywood's brutal reality, subscribe and stay with us because there's plenty more coming. And now I'm curious, have you actually seen any of these movies? Were they as bad as their reputation or unfairly blamed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it.